Ladies and gentlemen, it is officially 2022. And I am here with the man, the legend, T-Star. What do you have to say for yourself, Tyler?
I'm happy we made it here.
I
couldn't be
bro.
happier that I feel like I couldn't be happier every single episode. Which would mean I'm just on like an ever ascending slope of happiness. But I feel like that's got to be true.
I love it though, bro.
Yeah.
I'm glad that that's where your mind naturally gravitates.
Pressing record on the podcast is like, it's a dopamine rush like no other.
I'd have to agree. And especially getting into what we're planning to be such a great year, coming out of a pretty spotty previous year, man.
Yeah, definitely spotty.
It's been some trying times, to say the least, but we're here, we're doing it, and it's time to ring the new year in, bro. I don't know what else to say. We got a pretty good little episode lined up today. We're going through some news. We're going to have a talk about something I've been wanting to talk with you about for quite a while, Tyler, and that's video game collecting.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited to talk about that. I think that we're long overdue to have a full topic dedicated to this in specific. So I think that we're going to get quite a lot out of that one.
Yeah, and I also feel like this is something we're definitely not going to get in one go. This is something that will be revisited in the future. And it's something we're going to talk about regularly. I mean, a portion of what we talk about on the podcast is collecting. A lot about physical games and whatnot, you know. Mm-hmm. But it's cool to hone in on it and just have a full discussion on it. I've been dying for it. I'd like to hear a lot about what you think of, you know, the collecting scene and some of your personal interests in collecting. You know, maybe we haven't touched upon before.
Definitely. And I kind of keep quiet on this because you're kind of the de facto like collector expert. So I tend to just defer to you in most of this stuff, but I have quite a bit to talk about on my own end. So pretty excited to get into it, but yeah, that'll be our discussion topic.
Yeah. I hope you mean between the two of us, because I wouldn't call myself an expert.
Between the two of us, for sure. Yeah, that is what I mean.
I know enough, but the enthusiasm is definitely there with me.
Definitely.
And it's fluctuated.
Well.
It's fluctuated up and down, you know, throughout the years. So that's the type of thing we're going to talk about,
Absolutely.
You know, regarding it. But the top 5 is a little bit different from what we usually do. A lot of the time we're listing off games or characters, you know, things like that fall into a certain category. But this is a bit more personal and a lot more broad.
Yeah.
So what is it, Tyler?
Is. We're talking about our top 5 gaming accomplishments or achievements. I guess accomplishments we'll go with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is going to be totally personal to us. Totally like a little bit like humble braggy. But you know what? We don't do it often, so and it's stuff that is not anything world changing. At least my stuff isn't. It's just things that we're proud of ourselves internally, because that's what gaming's all about, Sterling. Like setting your own goals, achieving them, and getting satisfaction out of the gameplay. And so that's really what we're going to be talking about. Some kind of measurables in that category.
Yeah, some. I mean, looking at my list, some are, you know, feats that were accomplished, but some are just feel good accomplishments that, you know, like I said, some just single player or multiplayer, simple things, you know, nothing, things that so many other people have done, obviously, but things that impact us, you know, and this is a list you can make multiple times over. There's a lot of what we do with gaming involves us doing something in it to feel accomplished about, you know, even if it's just completing it.
Like I said, that's what it's all about.
Yep. So I'm looking forward to that, dude. That's going to be a pretty good top 5, but the news happens to be a little bit Lego related.
First time for everything.
We're not Lego collectors on the Star Road podcast, but
definitely not yet. but we may, you never know.
But Legos are definitely in the talks because we got, well, first of all, we were going to go into this and really just bring up the Sonic set.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the Super Mario sets come out. I've been a fan of them from afar. Obviously, I haven't picked up any Super Mario Lego items.
Yeah, they have a Lego store at a mall near here, and I was actually able to get to just do like a little run through with Mario, kind of going through one of the courses or whatever. And it was pretty.
Really?
It was, yeah, it was really fun. This was a while ago.
No shit, I don't think you mentioned it.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, I always wanted to get just the Mario, but you can't do that.
No. But yeah, they're coming out with Sonic, and this one was the one that we originally were talking about, like you said. And I watched the trailer for it and everything, and I was very interested by this because it's like a build your own, like Green Hill Zone, basically, like just rearrange the course however you want, similar to the Mario one. And I think that is such a cool concept.
Yeah, and you know something? They marketed this a bit different than they did the Super Mario sets. I feel like with the Mario sets, they showed a lot of action and the functionality. But I think with this, they, like you said, we watched the trailer that IGN uploaded, and the music was very nice, very chill, and they kind of marketed it more as like a display piece for adults than they did a functional, fun course. Like obviously, you have like the Green Hill Zone loop. Sonic's not going to take that loop.
No.
But they kind of are marketing the whole like, for adults too,
which is cool, and it gives. I'm definitely intrigued by it, but that wasn't actually the most exciting Lego announcement we got.
Not at all. This morning, and you were on the road this morning, but I was hunkered down, and I got a notification from Nintendo, and I said, "Wow, we're talking about Legos, and they lay this shit on us." So, speaking of Super Mario Legos, they just, as far as I'm concerned, this was the announcement, but it's available now. As well as the Sonic. Sonic came out New Year's Day. But Super Mario Luigi's Mansion expansion set.
Which is really neat.
We feel strongly about this.
Yeah, we're both big Luigi's Mansion fans. And I think that branching this from just the main Mario base set is such a noteworthy thing, and just really feels nice.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier, and I said, I went through the comments a little bit, and everybody was saying the same thing that I guess I was thinking but didn't really articulate, and that's that it's so nice to see Luigi's Mansion like really be solidified as a Nintendo franchise, like alongside Mario, alongside all these other big...
a mainstay.
Yeah. In its own right, it's got, it's been getting some marketing attention. I mean, ever since 3, it just seems to be more in the public eye.
Definitely.
Whereas before, if you were like really into Nintendo, you knew about it. But on the broad scale, it was more niche,
Definitely.
But I don't know if I'll be picking any of this up, to be honest with you. But it's cool to see.
It is.
It's cool to see Luigi's Mansion just getting any attention from Nintendo. It's kind of like when Metroid gets attention. Or Star Fox. I'm not going to get into it. But maybe, come out with a Star Fox Lego set or something.
Or, a game.
Yeah, throw us some type of bone. I'm not... A game is starting to seem like a lot to ask for some reason.
Yeah.
But I think we will see a Star Fox on the Switch before it's all said and done.
I hope so.
Which moves us into a Switch-related news topic we decided to do today. And that's kind of where we are with Switch game sales. Wrapping up 2021. There's been a lot of very high selling games on the Switch, and reportedly they've sold 92 million. So that's pretty impressive for a console these days, Tyler. I got to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I think they said this thing's on track to outsell what is the Wii, and we all know the Wii was in many households.
The Wii was a big seller at the time, especially in Japan.
Yeah, so we're going to go through the list, top 10 best-selling Switch titles as of this year. Now, this is the end of third quarter from September. List courtesy of Nintendo Life. So, number 10, Tyler, Ring Fit Adventure at 12.21 million. I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, that's really nice, though. It continues sort of the trend of the Wii Fit and everything, kind of just like keeping that trend alive, because all the Wii Fit games really sold well. So it's nice to see that sort of, I would consider that one fitness franchise, right? And it's nice to see that.
Yeah, and this was more RPG heavy, from what we saw from it. And I remember a point whenever this was really hard to find, and it was getting treated bad on the secondary market. People were paying hundreds for this.
Yep.
But I remember seeing it though frequently. I mean, I've seen it in person maybe 4 or 5 times.
I definitely saw it over the holiday season when I was out shopping. It's definitely still out there on shelves.
Yeah, and I don't expect something like this to go on sale anytime soon. But I gotta admit, the one time I was maybe in the mood to get this, I think it was something like my girl took me out and was like, anything you want,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I really told myself if Ring Fit Adventure would have been, like, the box itself was in immaculate condition, I would have gotten it.
Mm-hmm.
No question. The box that was in there, the one they had, was destroyed.
Oh, that's sad.
Dude, it was so mistreated. I can't believe they didn't mark this thing down. It looked like it was crushed by a golem and then placed inside of this glass case and locked up.
That's funny. That is sad, though.
It's sad, though, because I really would have been like, you know what? I want Ring Fit Adventure. Anything. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the day I got Origami King.
Nice. Worth it.
Yeah, so that was good. At number 9, Splatoon 2, 12.68 million. Not a surprise to me.
Not a surprise.
We know that the Splatoon fandom runs deep. It's a game we've been interested in these games, but just really haven't.
They never go on sale.
No, you'll see them on these $45 every now and then AAA sales, but at the same time, our attention is so elsewhere.
Yeah.
And plus, I've often thought from time to time, which maybe this is wrong, but it's a little late. They're coming out with Splatoon 3, and I just feel like it's kind of late to start back at the beginning and work my way through when I already have such a serious backlog.
Yeah, definitely. That's the case with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pokemon, is going to be on the list. Mm-hmm. Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, 13.83 million.
Mm-hmm. No surprise there. I mean, that was the first Pokemon game on the Switch. I mean, you'd expect to see that.
Definitely. And I think that's the biggest point, that it was the first Pokemon entry on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to also think about the fact that even with the Go mechanic, because it was much different, obviously. You're not battling wild Pokemon. Yeah. I mean, there's so much different about it. But I feel like even if someone like you or I, which I was happy to play it, Mm-hmm. When my girl first got her Switch, one of the first things she got was Let's Go Eevee, and you already know I was playing through that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot different, but somebody like us, even if not begrudgingly, they would want to play a remake of any sort that's first gen oriented, right?
Right.
So that really speaks to the sales, I'd say.
Yeah. I wonder how that is I wonder how the 2-pack gets combined into this statistic. Like, does the 2-pack count as 1 or 2 units?
Did they do a 2-pack for Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee?
Definitely, yeah.
Oh, I had never seen it. I mean, I've gotten the dual packs for everything on Switch so far. You know what's funny? I pre-ordered 2 copies of Arceus, even though it's identical. But me and my girl just have to have one each.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm pretty sure there was a 2-pack. Maybe I'm just thinking of Sword and Shield. But either way, even for Sword and Shield, if that was potentially on the list, which it is, spoiler alert, I wonder if the 2-pack would count there.
Yeah, I guess that would count as, if they're combining them, that would count as 2 copies.
2 units, right? So
yeah, but usually you don't see them combined like they are here. You usually get separate figures on the entries.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd be interested to see how that worked out. But either way, not surprising to see Let's Go on this list.
Not at all. Number 7, Super Mario Party. I think that this is, and that's 16.48 million.
Yeah.
Might be accredited to the fact that this was one of the first Switch games, kind of, right?
I buy that. I'm definitely surprised to see it on the list because I own the game, but I've never heard anyone else really talk about the game that much, to be honest with you.
I think it benefited. It benefited from being an early title.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So yeah, pretty interesting to see it on the list. It's nice though. Certainly speaks to why they came out with Mario Party Superstars and everything. Which, by the way, not to divert too much from this list, but I actually got to play Superstars for the first time over the weekend and everything, and the game's really fun, man. It takes a lot of what Super Mario Party had issues with in terms of mainly the games take quite a long time. And it really sped things up a lot, and the mini games are quite good as well. So it kind of features mini games from like all Mario parties in the past, which I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, big fan of Mario Party Superstars. If you want a Mario Party game, I would probably recommend Superstars over Super Mario Party. And don't get confused by the very similar titles.
Good to hear, dude. Good to hear you're enjoying it.
Yeah, definitely.
Next, the rest of these are pretty much to be expected across the board. Number 6, Super Mario Odyssey, 21.95 million.
Surprised to see it so low, honestly, but no surprise to see it on the list.
Definitely. But this should, man, when you look at the competition it's got, it makes sense. But at the same time, this is, you would think this would be numero uno.
Nope.
Moving on, though, number 5, Pokemon Sword and Shield, 22.64 million.
No surprise there, and I wouldn't be surprised if the fact that it was sold as a bundle of 2 quite a lot pumps this up a little bit, as we mentioned.
Definitely. And I feel like, controversy aside, everybody who was bitching about the game played it and owned it.
Yeah, I mean, it's above Odyssey on the list, so
yeah,
that's all you really need to say.
Yeah. Sales were not affected by any controversy, clearly. Number 4, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Honestly thought this was going to be higher.
Yeah, but no surprise. Looking at the top 4, you could tell me any order for these and I would 100% understand it.
Definitely. Number 3, let's just get right into it. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, 25.71 million.
And it's funny because that's about right. That's about right. I even though I almost feel like at this point Smash is kind of a niche audience, but this obviously proves that that's not the case, and there is quite a casual fan base for the game as well, which is good to see.
Definitely, bro. I mean, Smash is blowing up in popularity, and I think any Smash entry that goes on a Nintendo console is going to be on this list at any given time. That's
true.
It's interesting how it's evolved. But then again, that even Melee had the 1 million copy seller, It was one of those games on the GameCube.
Yeah, it definitely was.
This is much more than 1 million seller, though, I got to tell you that. Number 2, you'd almost expect to be number 1 at this point. That's Animal Crossing New Horizons, 34.85 million. That is almost a 10 million copy gap between number 3 and number 2.
And it's no surprise.
Animal Crossing New Horizons sold 10 million more units than Smash Ultimate, man. That
And
really
Breath
says
of the
a lot.
Wild.
And almost 15 million more than Odyssey.
But I mean, you know, this was a game that had a broader appeal than pretty much any other game on this list. So that makes sense.
No question, man. Number one, it's just to be expected. It's kind of unbeatable. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, 38.74 million.
Yeah, and I think it goes without saying that part of the reason this is number one on the list is because it was sold in the Switch bundle for so long.
That's the most important note to make.
Yeah, so I mean, the Switch bundles had this in perpetuity. It felt like for basically the first like year or two of the Switch's life cycle. So the fact that this is the top of the list is no surprise at all.
Not at all. And even if it was bundled wasn't bundled with the system at any point, you could still expect Mario Kart to perform.
100%, yeah.
It's just such an accessible game that people, I can't tell you how many times I heard, oh, I picked up a Switch for so-and-so significant other, or I personally picked up a Switch to play Mario Kart.
Yeah. Interesting note about this list. From what I can tell, 1 port, 1 remake, 8 original games.
Interesting, definitely.
Very interesting.
Because
a lot of people say
one.
Number 1 is the port, and Let's Go would be the remake, obviously. I feel like that's kind of almost loose to call that a remake, because yes, it is a remake, but it's a completely different game mechanically. But yeah, kind of interesting. A lot of people would criticize the Switch and say some of the best games on it are like, you know, ports and remakes, but this is obviously proving that that's not the case.
Yeah, I did find it funny when you brought it up, though, that number 1 is a port, but it's just naturally.
Bundled.
Yeah, definitely. Because when you bundle this game, and especially, and the price tag on the Switch doesn't change, that's really attractive, man.
Yeah, definitely.
If
I'm
you
pretty sure
purchased one.
I'm pretty sure the Switch that I bought was from this bundle, because I got the physical copy of 8 Deluxe alongside it from the gentleman that I purchased it from.
Yeah, more than likely. But interesting list. I'll be interested to see the one updated with Q4 in mind. Like I said, I don't expect anything to be switched around here. The gaps are pretty clear.
Yeah.
I can't see any surge that would do anything visible to this list outside of maybe something being on the heels of Ring Fit Adventure, you know.
And I don't think anything would have passed it by now. I think you will see stuff like Mario Golf eventually pass it and get on this list, maybe. But I don't know, just the amount of time, I feel like it will take quite a long time for that to happen, because that game came out this year, and, you know, Ring Fit's been out for quite a long time.
Yeah, most of these games have longevity as far as how long they've been out. So it makes perfect sense.
Reading this Nintendo Life article, it looks like Ring Fit Adventure knocked New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe out of the top 10, which is pretty interesting.
Oh man, that's such a deserving one to be on there, though. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, that came out before Super Mario Maker 2, and without Mario Maker 2 being out, you needed a 2D Mario experience that was like current for the Switch.
Correct, and we need a new one, Nintendo. We do. Oh, you know, I wanted to get on Super Mario Maker 2 the other day so bad, dude. I almost did. I really miss when that game was just the talk of the town, bro. That was really good times. It's still good, though. It's still good to fire up every once in a while.
Definitely. But today we wanted to do something a little special and do a little spotlight on a very special company that just so happens to have special in the title, and that's Special Reserve Games.
Yeah. You put me onto these guys recently as you became aware of them, and pretty interesting to see what they're doing.
No question, man. I brought up Limited Run before, and I bring them up because maybe it's a good time to mention. They also have a podcast called Games You Deserve. that I've listened to a little bit. It seems like they didn't post anything after December of 2020 or so. Funny, like maybe a month and a half after we started doing this.
Yeah.
But I listened back to some stuff because I saw they actually had the guys from Limited Run on there.
Mm.
So it was interesting to hear both of them in the same industry talk about, the art of bringing digital games to physical form, which is something I feel strongly about, So I thought we'd do a little showcase today and just kind of, these guys seem to be a little lesser known than Limited Run. Limited Run's very established. Even I'm walking around with one of their hoodies on.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to throw these guys some love because I fell in love with a game recently, Tyler, called Loop Hero.
Mm-hmm.
I was completely unaware of this game's existence until recently when it was announced that the Switch port was out. Mm-hmm. But it came out on the PC earlier in the year. So, I saw it on a really good sale on PC. Picked it up, and I kind of haven't played anything since maybe 2 days before Christmas, man, except Loop Hero. I told you earlier.
All other games have fallen by the wayside.
Oh, man. I told you earlier, if we just did the Game Awards, if I would have found this game a few days earlier, it would have been Indie of the Year. No question.
That's awesome.
Point being, I was just looking around after I played it some and really got into it. I fell in love with it. I started looking around YouTube, at some content around it. And in the comments, I saw somebody be like, man, I really would like to purchase this physically. Mm-hmm. And somebody just commented beneath that and said Special Reserve Games. So I looked the company up. And sure enough, man, they actually, one of their more recent releases was Loop Hero. They do a lot of work with Devolver Digital, who mm-hmm. we've brought up before many times, mm-hmm. even without mentioning by name. Mm-hmm. They did The Messenger. We just talked about The Messenger on the last episode, I believe.
Yeah.
These guys actually did a physical copy of The Messenger, which was beautifully done. So really cool to see Loop Hero on there. So I actually pulled the trigger in for $44.99. I got a reserve copy of it. I kind of want to see. I showed you earlier. We watched the Carry On unboxing. Mm-hmm. Really, really good showcase of the quality that's put into, the production of this, the care. I mean, we see things like, raised and embossed actual sleeve artwork, what goes into the Switch case. That's not something we've seen before.
No, not at all.
And that was
not
something
really
that we kind of
well.
highlighted. Yeah. Usually it's just flat printed, nothing too special about it. But these guys seem to, they take care in this, And the quality looks very high. So I got the Switch reserved for Loop Hero and also one of their art prints. I kind of wanted to see, how these look. They seem to be pretty well crafted, man. $25. I mean, that's not too hard of a buy. So when these things come in, I'll definitely be talking about them. But for now, we're talking about the company itself. And you mentioned that you saw some games on here that you had some interest in that they've done. A lot of it's Devolver.
All the stuff that is sold out, unfortunately. But I've heard there's a few games that I haven't played, but I've heard positive things about, like Enter the Gungeon,
definitely.
Gris, a couple other ones just thumbing through the list here. Obviously, we talked about The Messenger. But yeah, man, Hotline Miami, obviously, that's a well-known franchise. Mm-hmm. But yeah, man, really nice to see people kind of supporting indie developers with the physical side. Like, obviously, it's one thing to develop your own game, release it, getting it, I feel like most indie games are developed for the PC. So for an indie developer, just getting it over to the Switch is already going to be a hurdle. And then getting, physical releases on Switch, PS4, and Xbox, etc., like that's even more of a hurdle for some indies. So to see a company solely dedicated to making these physicals happen and knowing that there's multiple companies in this space doing it, it just warms our indie loving hearts.
Definitely, man. I couldn't agree more. And it's nice to see their little flair on it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because they seem to do things a certain way. And I kind of wanted to read their mission statement here, not too long. But, it speaks to what they do kind of better than we can explain it, just talking about looking at a box. But it says, at Special Reserve Games, we create amazing physical packages to honor the games you love. We scoff at the minimum standards and seek out the maximum standards. Our game jacket covers are printed on the thickest allowed paper per console standards. Reserve boxes are constructed from a custom-made material. We couldn't find paper we liked enough for our instruction booklet covers, so we made our own paper. We use complex printing processes to combine embossing, debossing, raised UV, spot UV, grit texture, multiple layers of protective laminate, and more. A 200-pound person can stand on our shipping box and it wouldn't crumple. It's a big thing we talked about, Tyler. We put quality above everything because we know you love these games and we want holding them in your hands for the first time to be a remarkable tactile experience.
That's something I don't really have anything else to say. I mean, that really sums it up perfectly. It's funny that you mentioned that because we got so bummed out when both of our Banana Mania, launch edition packages came and the outer box was just damaged, absolutely brutalized in the shipping process. So really love to hear that these guys are paying this much attention to every aspect, start to finish, not just any one thing, but even, going as far as to protect the shipping from these horrible handlers.
Absolutely.
I think that's amazing.
Yep. They don't even want you receiving it in its pristine form to be compromised.
Correct. And I think that's awesome.
Definitely, man. But looking at the presentation of these, I love I can't wait to get Loop Hero and see, exactly what we're working with, but I love that rubber looking coating. Mm-hmm. It's just got an NES vibe and it's got this rubber coating and it just seems like such a nice format for like a boxed game as opposed to like maybe your typical cardboard. There's nothing wrong with doing like an NES box with the cardboard that they used. But
I mean, let's be honest, Sterling, most of the games that we buy don't even have boxes at all. Like they don't come with any cardboard element, manual, anything. It's a plastic case like wrapped and a game cartridge and that's it.
Yep, we just talked about that when we watched the Carry-On unboxing. That it feels good to see that empty slot that's in every Switch game actually have a manual in it. We'll get into the collecting talk soon enough, but of the 30 or so Switch games I have, one of them has a manual, and that's Moonlighter, and that was an indie.
Yep.
Everything else, no manual, empty slot, but you put the slot in the case. That's what I find interesting.
Yeah, really, really sad, man. Game manuals are one of the coolest things that I remember just from owning games as a kid. The first thing I would do when I bought a game before I ever played the game was just go through the entire manual.
Same. I've heard that from so many people, man. It's so funny you say that because that used to be the joy of it. You kind of read that as the
intro,
the tutorial.
Yeah, 100%.
And then the game throws you straight in most of the time with none of the tutorial. Nowadays that's changed with modern games. But this used to be our tutorial, was manuals. So it's nice to see that they're never going to neglect a manual being involved.
Yeah, which is much appreciated.
Much appreciated indeed, my brother. But shout out to Four Quarters for making Loop Hero. Shout out to Devolver for publishing it and so many great games. And shout out to Special Reserve for working so closely with Devolver and getting these games in physical format, man.
Definitely.
So I'll be looking forward to my Quake Switch Deluxe from Limited Run and now my Loop Hero Reserve from Special Reserve. It'll be cool to, kind of not critically, of course, because I love both companies. But it'll be cool to get these releases around the same time and kind of get a comparison view without intending to per se.
Imagine getting them on the same day. That would be like the biggest rush ever.
Yeah, that'd be pretty gnarly, man. But we'll be talking more about Special Reserve for sure whenever the Loop Hero Reserve comes in, and we get a look at this thing. I'll get on webcam with you and maybe open it. And,
oh yeah, that could be fun.
Yeah, man. But we got quite the discussion today, my friend. Kind of an all-encompassing discussion.
Pretty much, yeah. It kind of like I feel like it's the baseline of our podcast almost, or it has turned into such.
Definitely, and that's the topic of game collecting. Now, there's an easy start for me. I don't know if your mind goes to any particular zone.
Not at all.
Think about collecting,
because we're going to talk about past and present with this. Like,
no question.
This isn't just going to be kind of us talking about our collections and like, here's what I have. End of topic. Like, I think it's interesting to talk about the state of game collecting as a whole, with the context of our experience as well, of course, but just more on the broad scale.
Definitely. And of course, we're from time to time, we're going to talk about games we have or amounts of, amount is a big thing. But it's kind of like not just about accumulating games or anything like that specifically. But, something I think about is the exchange, for example. You talk about collecting as an adult, but when we were younger, man, we used to do a lot of exchanging.
Definitely. I mean, some of our best stories and memories come from trades that we executed of individual games.
Yep.
Or failed to execute, as the case may be.
And in some cases, executed 2 decades later.
Yep.
Perhaps in the current recording of the podcast or in the duration of this podcast.
Mm.
We had the Yoshi story thing. I mean, that was pretty, you got to admit, that was pretty moving.
It was. And yeah, just like, it's something that is impossible with digital games. Not to make this a digital versus physical comparison. That's not really what this is about, but it can't be understated. Like, collections, a digital collection just means something different, right? It's impossible to trade a digital game in most cases. In every case on the Switch, in most cases elsewhere. And I think that, there's something to that. There's something to the ability to trade anything with a friend or give your friend a gift, receive a gift from them of a physical object.
And the borrowing, the temporary trading.
No question.
The exposure to games that we wouldn't have had, any exposure to otherwise. And it's funny because we talk about collecting. Most of the time, we're going to talk about it being a permanent thing, but I guess you could call this temporary collecting.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Just the intertwining market of you and your friends. Because like we talked about, you could friend share on Steam and shit like that, but physically swapping cartridges and discs is where we come from.
Definitely.
But it seems like it's gone the wayside, though, man. We're in a world full of digital. I'm always going to champion physical.
Definitely.
I think I might even be more on that spectrum than you. Whenever we get on the topic.
Well, yes, I would say definitely. But it's funny because you have. In the lifespan of this podcast and just of our recent friendship, you have brought me more into that mindset than I was at one point, to the point where I was just as happy, if not happier, to own a game digitally as I was physically. But as time goes on, I've kind of come back around to seeing what the benefit of physical games versus digital can be.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, but I don't want to hurt the checkbook.
No, I really, there's digital games have a time and a place, and there's a lot of things that I prefer digital, right? for what I was actually going to mention Mario Maker 2, even though that's a hard hitter, first party Nintendo release. It's a game that I'm happy to own digitally, as well as Animal Crossing New Horizons, because it's such a switch to it for a little bit and get some mileage out of it, and then you're done. And just the ability to do so with the game digitally without having to change a cartridge is nice, definitely.
Can't argue with that. I definitely cannot argue with that. I've done quite a bit of cartridge swapping. It's not ideal. But I think it's worth the hassle for certain things to own the physical.
I agree.
Certain things I feel better about not having a physical for, but then, some things kind of require it. But maybe it makes me think of the GTA collection, because I feel like the want for a physical for that kind of waned down when we saw the quality of the game.
Quickly, yeah.
To where it's not, it's not as monumental or like just something to marvel at. Yeah, like the copy of it. They tainted it, so.
A little bit. It's still something that I will probably get eventually, but
I'm gonna get it. Yeah,
that was a game that I never had any qualms with getting digitally either. I think that's a perfect type of game to have digital.
I just feel like they made me more open to getting it digitally after all of this,
Yeah. But I have a question for you, Sterling.
I have a few for you as well, but I'll definitely answer any question you've got for me.
I want to know what do you define as collection? Do you feel like I guess, how specific is your definition? Where are you talking about any game that you own is a part of your collection? Or when you say collection, are you thinking more, I have a collection that has this in common with each other? Like, I'm collecting this. Like, people collect stamps. They collect baseball cards. I collect Pokemon games. You collect NES games. Like, where does that fall for you?
Well, for me, a collection can be 3 games you own for Game Boy Color. Whether it's 3 or 300, that's your Game Boy Color collection. Mm-hmm. Now, you could speak of your collection as a whole. I could talk about my shelf and excess boxes and call that my collection. Mm-hmm. But I usually, in my mind, I categorize my collections by system. And, even though I do this, it's not to say I have unbelievably large catalogs for a wide variety of systems. I've got 100 or so on the NES, and then I found 30 is like the magic number for so many systems. I have original Game Boy, roughly 30 games. Mm-hmm. Same goes for Switch. Same goes for N64. And Super Nintendo's about 20. But I like to think of them separately, but the number really doesn't have a bearing, in my opinion. Even if you owned 6 Switch games, that's your Switch physical collection,
Makes sense.
So I feel like I have a pretty broad view on what a collection is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It could be a subset. Now, there's subsets of things. I was going for like the black box set on NES for a while. Mm-hmm. And I got down to the ridiculous 2 or 3. Donkey Kong Jr. Math, for example. Mm-hmm. Things that I'm just not going to spend that type of money on, and I'm not going to find in a dumpster, realistically. Right. So, I got 2 or 3 games away from very affordably getting the black box set. And then I kind of lost interest finishing or having a black box set. So, some of the games got included in, lots and whatnot. Now, a lot were duplicates. I have most of that black box set still intact. Mm-hmm. But there were some that had, a nice price tag on it that I just didn't see myself playing. Because that's the big thing, Tyler. Like, it's funny how I contradict myself. I get things like, see, these days, I was telling you earlier, I don't really pick up games often that aren't like new Switch releases or things like that. Like I got Journey to Silius at that shop and like Kirby's Pinball Land.
Yeah, you're not picking up retro very often.
Yeah, and we had the N64 days not too long ago where we both were kind of grabbing some games, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I started picking up a lot of rare games I didn't own at the time, you know? And, but other than that, man, it seems like, you know, the recent purchases I made, kind of like the Quake thing and the Loop Hero thing. I already have these games, both playable on Switch and PC, because I picked Loop Hero up on Switch as well. And by the way, it's funny, we talk about Slay the Spire, just to veer off for a second. I have a stylus, like one of those DigiRoot styluses. Feels so good to play Loop Hero, like sliding the cards around and just touchscreen like that.
Yeah.
Gotta love the Switch, dude. With shit like that and Slay the Spire.
Yeah, 100%.
But I veered off from my point completely. But I think what I was talking about was, it's funny how I would get these deluxe editions like Quake, or stuff I have playable on multiple platforms, but then I've pared down systems because I was like, I'm not going to play these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, it's a bit contradictory, and I'll admit that, you know.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think if a game means something to you and you want to own it just for the sake of owning it on multiple platforms, I don't see an issue with that at all. And there's games that I play on multiple platforms, like Slay the Spire. That's probably the biggest one. Don't Starve comes to mind. I have that on multiple platforms. So, you know, I don't think it's that far-fetched. I know you actually play Quake on multiple platforms as well. So,
yeah, I think I'm being critical of myself more on the topic of purchasing like a deluxe or reserve edition that I already have playable on multiple platforms. I think it's a gauge of enthusiasm.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't do this for games, but I did it for Quake and I did it for Loop Hero because they hit me hard enough to want physical media that's, you know, the game officially.
Makes sense to me.
But at the same time, the contradictory side is me. At one point, I had maybe 225 NES games, and I pared down to like 101.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm at right now. Because one day I suddenly was like, you know, I have no attachment to having so many games on one platform. It just was a bountiful era of picking up a lot of games at pawn shops, and just like I came across estate sales and things like that, you know? And it just kind of swelled up. And one day I said, you know what? I'm going to start paring down, and any game that I wouldn't on any given day, if I was like, I'm going to play some NES, if I wouldn't even consider popping this game in, it's got to go.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so I got down to where I'm at now. But it makes me feel good to know that I don't have this hollow library sitting on my shelf. I have
that's fair.
Rows of games that are all worth playing.
Yeah, and that's where you want to be. And I think that's what sort of differentiates types of collectors, right? A lot of people will collect things that they never have any intention of using or can't use. My biggest game collection, I hinted at earlier, and I've talked about it on other episodes, is just physical Pokemon cartridges. Like, I own almost every iteration of a Pokemon game except for Platinum at this point. And I don't own Sword or Shield digitally. But the entire motivation behind that was just having the maximum functionality available to me, where, and I never use this, but I could potentially, you know, bring Pokemon from Gen 3 all the way forward into Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl once it gets home access, like, or Sword and Shield, for instance.
Yeah.
And that it would take several hours, if not days, for me to get to the point to do this. But I think that that's cool. And that was sort of like this collection that I have was sort of unintentionally built around that, just the functionality aspect. And I think that for me is where collecting lives. Like every N64 game that I've purchased in the last year is with the intent of playing it. And every retro purchase that I make is 100% with the intention of having access to the game to play. And I think that's where collecting hits the hardest for me, is just access, right? That is kind of
Definitely.
That's where my mindset is.
And that's a mature mindset. That's the mindset that I matured into.
Yeah.
As far as not going out of my way to accumulate anything that I wouldn't play, that I don't have some type of attachment to, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting, though, that you bring up like a cross-platform collection, because I never viewed something like that. I feel like even just having all of this certain type of game on this console is like enough for me if I'm enthusiastic about the console.
Yeah.
Like I felt about like the Pokemon DMG games. Everything up to Crystal, which I sent you Gold, and I actually that shows how I've matured as a collector. I don't feel anything about not owning Gold.
Yeah.
I feel pretty happy about having the remainder of the DMG titles. And that's one of those little subsets, that I'm happy about, is the DMG
Definitely.
Pokemon games. Along with TCG. You gotta love it.
Absolutely.
But that's actually what got me started on collecting, oddly enough. As far as being an adult, or in this case, being 18 years old, having a job, having a little bit of money, I found myself picking up original Game Boy games. That was the first thing I was really into. And I think that kind of segued me into an interest in the NES, even though as a child, we didn't have an NES. Me and you are a bit younger than the NES days,
Definitely, yeah.
Early 90s, not so much mid 80s, or,
Right.
In most cases, people born in the early 80s, late 70s really were kids when the NES came out, But I kind of went back and had this, this love that I found for NES that was kind of through Game Boy. I've always loved just the aesthetic of all of it. But it's just the idea of the home souped up Game Boy. That's kind of what it was to me early on. And I really found, a love for the console. It's the only one that I have maybe 5 of the actual consoles for, and so many peripherals and things.
Yeah.
But a lot of the collecting also, Tyler, goes into systems, not just games. So even though it's not a collection, something you own, your GameCube, your CRT, that's for like a specific reason, man. And that's
Definitely.
the original hardware, original experience. I think that's where a lot of collectors' minds are.
Absolutely, yeah.
People become collectors from one day saying, you know what, man, I really would like to pick up, a PS2 and get this handful of PS2 games that I played when I was younger. And then they start wanting more and more games, because suddenly that's so much more accessible, like we said before, than when we were kids. We didn't have so much control. So whatever we got, we barter and rent and things like that.
Definitely.
The temporary collecting, like we called it earlier,
Yeah, that's an interesting point, man. I have a lot of systems, just looking around me right now, and it's pretty interesting to kind of reconcile that, because it's impossible to play 7 game consoles at once, right? Like that's just never going to happen. So it all comes down to, like I said, and like we were just talking about, access. Like I have the CRT over here that has the GameCube and the N64 hooked up. That's all I really cared to get this CRT to do originally, was just to hook my GameCube up and play Melee with no lag. So, you know, it's funny how it kind of evolves over time, like you said.
Yeah. It just, I think you said it earlier a couple times, man. Accessibility. I think that's the big thing. It's just so nice to, you could say it's nice to pick from a menu screen and load up a downloaded game. But then something about popping a cartridge or a disc in and hitting power.
But it's getting harder and harder, man. The price of collectibles, retro games, and any collectible is just, in the past 2 years, has absolutely skyrocketed.
Definitely, man. I mean, I remember looking at Paper Mario. That's just an example I'll use, for 64. I remember it being 70, 80 when I was looking at it, and I was like, oh, no way, man. But I sure would love to own this. Like, that's probably my most coveted N64 game at the moment. But then I go back a week or two ago, man, and that thing is going for 100, man.
That's crazy, man.
I'm not talking about one solitary listing. I'm talking about a few.
That's the going rate.
That seems to be the going rate, like 90 being bottom end as far as the listings I saw.
Yeah. One other aspect that I don't really talk about too much on this podcast, but I play Magic the Gathering, and I have or had, I guess, accumulated quite a large volume of cards, with a lot of it being bulk of just stuff that I never got rid of. But over the years, playing multiple formats and everything, I accumulated quite a few cards that were worth more than when I purchased them, we'll say. So I actually recently did a big offload of a lot of my collection. I sold dozens of cards that were minimum, we'll say $20-$30. And that was really satisfying, as well as getting rid of all the bulk that I had. So I think part of the joy of collecting can be honing in or optimizing a collection, like you were saying with your NES, where you start collecting, you accumulate too much of something, and then it feels good to actually pare down your collection into what brings you the most joy. And I think that, that's the entire other side of acquiring, is, getting rid of stuff.
I couldn't agree more. I'm so glad that you went here, because it's funny how I almost felt like I got addicted to paring down.
Mm-hmm. You just get in these purge mindsets. Like I'm going to be in this mindset soon, because we're moving soon. And I'm going to need to condense a lot of stuff, or I'm going to want to condense a lot of stuff to make moving easier and everything. Been living in the same house for like 4 years now. So I think it's just kind of like, accumulate over time and stuff like that. But I'm really looking forward to getting into my closet over here and purging a lot of things that I don't need. Not much of it is going to be games, but like just old cables and hookups, like Ethernet cables, random power cables to things I don't own, like just all kind of stuff. Just getting rid of things, I think, can be satisfying.
First thing going up on eBay, custom robo. Everything must go.
Absolutely not. No, I'm not really going to be getting rid of much to any games in this process.
I figured you wouldn't, and that's kind of what I thought earlier when you were talking about how you have so many consoles. Regardless of whether or not you're playing them every day, do you really have any desire to offload them? Like, I don't think so.
Only if there was a reason. I've talked about to a friend of mine, like selling my PS4 to him because he would actually get a lot of use out of it, and I don't. Stuff like that, I think, is valid. As far as getting rid of it in any other way, selling it on the internet in any way or anything like that, not really interested. Not really interested. Certainly wouldn't toss or donate any of the consoles that I have. by any means. If I decided to sell something to a friend, that's about the extent of what I would actually get rid of something.
Yeah, I've gotten to a point where between, selling lots and eBay selling, I've gotten to a point where I don't feel that I want to offload anything else. I feel comfortable with where I'm at. And that anything I accumulate from here forward is going to be something I don't double back on. I just feel like I've matured enough to where I know when I purchase something that I want it, and that I'm not going to be like, oh man, what have I done? I have to recoup the cost of this,
Definitely. And that's I think that's a big aspect of collecting, is knowing what to collect and when to not purchase something.
Yeah, because we're not rich here, but the pawn shop days I always talk about, that was how I got the collection I have. Is the getting and flipping. I mean, like I said, something that even something you'd keep. Like I got a Mario Party 2 one time from the pawn shop, $5, went for 60 to 70.
Yep.
It was kind of hard when I'm on the hunt to to collect and to flip, and kind of hard not to flip that, because it's a find. It's it's contributing to the point of what I'm doing, is to get games, to flip them, to get other games.
Definitely.
So in a situation like that, of course you're going to flip Mario Party 2, because at a time where I'm focusing on a different console, shit, that's $55 profit to go towards a game for that system.
Definitely.
And you're not coming out of pocket. You came out of pocket $5. It's almost like winning at the roulette table, but it's a bit more of a sure thing,
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
But I feel like this is just part one, really, of the game collecting talk. And
yeah, there's so much to go through.
Yeah, you get it from time to time with us. I mean, when we were picking up N64 games, we were talking about them as we got them.
Definitely.
And that's collector talk, So from time to time, we'll touch back on it. Maybe, one day in the future, we'll have a part 2 to this. And, we'll talk about the things we didn't talk about.
Definitely.
Focus on other aspects of it, But I think it's time to talk about some accomplishments we've made as
really
gamers,
excited
Tyler.
for this.
Yep, and the beautiful thing about it is that we have an honorable mention that's a collaborative. This is the last list I would have ever imagined having this scenario on.
Yeah, definitely.
But that is the absolute, utter 100% completion of Resident Evil 4 on GameCube.
Including max score or the highest tier score on Mercenaries on each level with each character, which is by far the most time-consuming aspect to completing that game.
And difficult.
Yeah, time-consuming and difficult, no question.
Yeah, Mercenaries is at the forefront of this selection. There's no question about that.
Yeah, I remember I spent pretty much an entire summer working on Mercenaries one year, where I had, played as much of the story as I could possibly ever want at that time. Not ever. And I knew, the hand cannon, you get it. I can't remember what the exact unlock condition for just the basic hand cannon is, but you don't unlock the infinite hand cannon on GameCube until I'm pretty sure you have to get 60,000 points with every character on every mercenary stage, if I'm not mistaken, which is incredibly difficult to do.
Oh, man.
But I spent an entire summer on this one time, and it was so satisfying to finally do it. Like, this was probably the first thing like this where I was like, I'm going to sit down and grind this out, and then it's going to be done.
Do you remember all the 1,000-point away attempts that crushed your soul?
Absolutely. And there's some characters on some levels that are just borderline impossible. But man, we were online, or at least I was, reading the strats, like trying to get people's, opinions on game FAQs about like what the best like what was the meta to keep your combo chains alive and everything.
I'm sure you fed a lot of that to me
It's possible, yeah.
through word of mouth. We
I
talked
know
about the
that
game a lot.
The the Krauser arm is OP, and Hunk is OP with his neck break. That's basically all I can say.
And Ada's like the hardest for most maps.
Yeah, Ada and Leon are both pretty hard in some cases.
Yep. But that is definitely an accomplishment worth mentioning. Like we said, with my list, and I'm sure yours, you know, not all of it's groundbreaking, but for us, it's personal.
Yeah. But I'm going to jump in with my number 5 here, Sterling.
Go for it, bro.
I changed this at the last second on my list, and I'm so glad that it came to me because this was this was something that meant a lot to me. But it was fully completing all secret exits and main exits on Super Mario World as a kid with no guide. Like, I didn't really realize how crazy this was until, you know, becoming an adult. And I say crazy, relatively speaking, to my abilities as a kid, right? But the amount of time that had to have taken to really find a few of those secret exits, it like, I can't fathom it now. But I just remember when you finally get the Koopa shell, like Mario and Luigi or whatever, like the different sprites for some of the characters for fully completing all secret exits and regular exits, like, it's just the most satisfying thing in the world. So that's my number 5.
It's a beautiful thing, dude. It's one of the single player accomplishments that I speak about, is just that right there.
Yep.
For my number 5, you know, I'm not sure. It's so hard to do an order for these, but I think the first one
Absolutely.
that I want to come out the gate with is going to be unlocking all the characters in Melee.
That's an interesting one.
A lot of people have done it. It's nothing groundbreaking.
I've done it probably half a dozen times in various ways.
Yeah, but I feel that this is something special because suddenly, when you unlock all of the characters, you have a complete copy.
Yeah.
When your friends come over, you're not missing anyone. It's just all there and it's all ready, dude. And something that gives a different end result to completing something in a game than we're used to.
Absolutely. And I feel like this is true for any Smash game, not just Melee. Like, one of my immediate goals upon getting Ultimate when it came out was unlocking every character as pretty much as quickly as possible.
Definitely. And I mean, dude, do you remember that feeling with Ultimate?
Yeah.
Like, just getting it release day, having to get, I remember you and my boy Brock just racing to get all the characters. First things first.
Yep, it was hard.
Yeah, and some of them were very difficult. That's what was so funny about it. Every now and then you came across
being an absolute beast.
I think I remember that too.
I think Mewtwo might be the last character I unlocked, which is hilarious because he's my most played character at this point.
Definitely. But that had to be an opener for the list, man. One of those little personal things that I think the reason it made the list is because of the payout. I mean, the whole world's opened up for Melee once you have everybody accessible.
Absolutely. Number 4 on my list is achieving 101% completion on Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, the original copy for the PS2 with all the glitches and bugs in it. It was possible to get 101% completion, and I did it. And I am glad that I did, because that's not something you could do even in the first re-release of the game. So that's a game that meant a lot to me, and I'm glad that I thought about this for this list because I think that it fits perfectly.
I think it does. It's funny how we gravitate to the 100% completions, but there's just something about knowing you touched upon everything.
Yep.
You didn't miss anything.
And you even got completion percentage for things that weren't supposed to be in the game. In the case of this game.
You went above and beyond. Yep. Like you can with DK64.
Yep. Same deal.
Yep. But that's a great entry, bro. The next one is going to be my last, or my only and final 100%. And that is Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask.
That's a difficult one.
Now, it's a very complex game, and I'll admit to you, I have no shame in it. I had a strategy guide.
Mm-hmm.
This was done with the assistance of a strategy guide.
The Brady Games era.
The Brady Prima era, yep.
Yeah.
But it was a feat even with the strategy guide.
No question.
Someone might say, "Oh, it's so restrictive with the time." The world and the events that occur in it are far from restrictive.
Mm-hmm.
We've said it before. You can restart the day cycle and go and do so many different things. It's just kind of uncanny. It's one of the beautiful things about the game.
Yeah.
But just 100%ing it, all heart pieces, fierce deity mask, the whole, just that was such an accomplishment for me, man.
That's a nice one for the list.
It's one that I spent some time on too, so I think it deserved to be mentioned.
My number 3 is, I feel like I've talked about this on the podcast before, but on the 3DS Virtual Console, Pokemon Crystal, I did a hardcore Nuzlocke with no speed up or anything, and made it all the way to red. Haven't actually fought that battle yet, so a little bit of an asterisk on this one, but just making it through the entire rest of the game up until red with hardcore Nuzlocke rules, which is basically if your Pokemon faints, it's dead. If your team whites out, you lose the run. And then the hardcore aspect is no items in battle, no leveling your Pokemon higher than the next gym leader's highest Pokemon. So that is tough, but I really felt motivated to do it in my favorite Pokemon game ever, which is Crystal. So I did it. My save file is still in a place of just grinding to beat red. So that will happen someday, hopefully, or it won't. But just the fact that I did it, up until that point, pretty happy with that.
I'm happy with it too, bro. I'm happy to hear it on this list. My number 3 is going to be, and now look, nothing earth-shattering, personal goals broken, and a lot of happiness surrounding it. But just sometimes I got on 007 GoldenEye on the N64. For a little while, I had gotten into, trying to get times on really just dam and streets. They seem to be, the most doable, and just two that I gravitated to. Mm-hmm. And I didn't get the world record. I didn't tie it or anything like that. But, I got within certain seconds of it. I think I got 118 on streets, and the record at the time was like 112. I guess like 58, 59 on dam, and the world record was like 52 or 53, things like that, Now, yeah. 6 seconds is a lifetime when it comes to speed running. But I mean, even with these times, I had kind of shattered what I thought I would do.
Definitely.
And I was pretty happy about it, man.
Absolutely.
It's nice to do something like this. And the rest of my list really is like speed run content. But at the same time, it's the very few instances where I had interest in speed running something.
Yeah, definitely.
But definitely deserving of the list, man. Just thought it had to be mentioned.
Awesome.
GoldenEye, gotta love it.
My number 2 slot is an amalgamation of things. I grouped it as competitive TCG accomplishments, which sounds really like bougie when I say it like that, but just breezing through it quickly. There's nothing insane here, but just playing competitively, reaching mythic rank on Magic the Gathering Arena is pretty tough. I've done that in 2 or 3 different seasons. I played in one Yu-Gi-Oh tournament at age 13 and
Oh man.
was fortunate enough to win that tournament, like first place, which was pretty cool. And then for Paper Magic, I've played in quite a few PTQs and IQs, which is like regional qualifiers, and not won them, but placed in them, which is still pretty nice to place in an event that's like 100, 200 people at times.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome.
So yeah, I would say just the entirety of my like TCG sphere would be kind of this spot on the list.
That's really awesome, dude. Just to hear about the real life, like in-person Paper Magic domination.
Yeah, there was probably, I would say, 2 years that I was really on the local circuit pretty hard. I never played Pro Tours or anything like that, but I was in the realm, locally and stuff. So I think that's pretty awesome.
I'm proud of you, bro.
Thanks, man. I haven't played Paper Magic since the start of the pandemic, besides, Commander with my friends. So I'm far, far disconnected from that world, unfortunately.
Well, hopefully it all gets back to a norm and gets back to the glory, man. You got to hope for the best.
Maybe. I sold a lot of my staples for other formats in this recent sell-off, so we'll see what happens. I'm not feeling... Say what?
I was just saying we're going into 2022 with a positive mindset, man. You got to keep it rolling.
I don't feel like I have to play Paper Magic, though, at the moment, competitively. That sort of mindset is not here for me right now. Just in lieu of the pandemic, a lot of places locally have tons of precautions in place and stuff like that. But for me, just not worth it. I would rather just play with my friends, in a more casual format, and then, play online some competitively, but not really.
Yeah, totally, man.
So the mindset has just kind of evolved over time.
My number 2, this is a game I have to recommend for anybody with a 3DS. I know it came out on Wii U as well, but Ultimate NES Remix. They just so happen to have leaderboards for every single miniature stage, every little mission in the game has got leaderboards for times.
That's cool.
And also have the video of everybody obtaining that time. So when I got this game, I kind of like that functionality, and
it's a pretty neat feature.
It really is. It's something you don't see too often, and it kind of blew me away. So it made me actually want to go for these times. Mm-hmm. So at first I'd start getting, third place and second place and be like, oh man, this is awesome. But then the hunger sets in, and I want to be number 1 on there. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot that I was tied with, 3 or 4 other people for number 1, where it was just like, that's where it's at. Whoever else hits it, hits it. But there was a good number, man. Like maybe 20 to 30 total, but 10 or so of them were just me.
Nice.
And I know these are like miniature games. Most of them are like, a minute long.
So?
Things like that. But I just felt like these, having leaderboards for each of them, it just felt really good to sit there and grind. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I did a lot of grinding when I got my wisdom teeth removed. I was in bed for like 3 days, and that was like the only game I played, dude. Was Ultimate NES Remix on 3DS,
nice.
trying to get times on shit.
That makes sense.
So I'm sure quite a few of those times were gotten in that 3 day period alone. Mm-hmm. But I was into it for a while, man. I always said I was going to hop back on and see if any of my times were still there, Mm-hmm. Look, I might do that later on, just out of curiosity. But
there you go.
I felt strongly about it, man. I was really happy about that. When you grind something, I think that all of these that we bring up have something to do with us putting time into it and grinding it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only appropriate that I had that, man.
Definitely, dude. My number one, this isn't something I talk about too much on the podcast, but my old school RuneScape Iron Man account, pretty happy with the progress on there. And the fact that this is number one might surprise some people, but if you play old school, you would definitely understand just the amount of time that it takes to get into the end game and everything. But yeah, like just stuff like having 2100 total level, which is getting up there for sure, especially on an Iron Man account, and just some of the items and like in-game gear that I have, like I'm pretty happy with the progress that I've gotten on there in about 2 years. And I still play the account and everything, and I'm really like enjoying the in-game content that's available to me after, progressing the account basically for about 2 years to be able to do it. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for me. That's my number one.
I've witnessed quite a bit of it, dude. I mean, I've sat here and before and after podcasts sometimes and, watched you stream it to me a little bit and watch you grind bosses and shit like that. And, it's been so long since I was active on RuneScape, but I mean, I know enough about old school to see the progress you've made, and I don't know shit about Iron Man, so I'm impressed because I understand the premise of it, and it's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
So I think it's deserving of number one. I mean, it's kind of like something it's the one thing that's definitely ongoing for you.
Definitely. Yeah. And it will continue to be for a while.
Yeah. So it's only appropriate, man. As with everything else on this list. My number one is something that wouldn't immediately come up as a number one type of thing, but I have a very specific reason why I chose it as number one. Now,
okay.
I would have to find the video on a hard drive, and I did a little sifting earlier. I couldn't come across it. I wish I had the exact time. It doesn't matter too much, really. But I used to do some speed running with, like, the first Super Mario Bros. And I'd get to, like, 4-2, and then I'd start to have issues with my run, So maybe quicker than I should have. I kind of was like, I'm not gonna go for the full game, So I just kind of tried to see what kind of times I can get with that period of the game, that first half or so that I was good at and could actually run. Mm-hmm. And I was able to match, some timestamps with, like I said, up to 4-2. I forgot what trick it was. It was like the Vine glitch or something that was, giving me a bit of trouble. But for some reason, I don't know if I came across the video first or if I just thought about it. For Super Mario 3D Land, for the 3DS, I think I came across the video for the current world record on video for a time on 1-1. And I said, you know what? I never thought about speedrunning a 3D Mario game. Mm-hmm. So I started grinding it. And I got to tell you, Tyler, speedrunning 3D Mario could not be further from speedrunning 2D Mario.
I do know that, yeah.
I mean, it's two totally different ball games. So I managed to tie the world record that was currently on video at the time.
That's awesome.
I don't care if I broke it or not. Tying that time felt like such an accomplishment.
Definitely.
You have no idea. I mean, I must have spent somewhere between a week or two optimizing my run on this one level. Mm-hmm. And in a 3D space, it requires a lot.
I can't imagine doing a 3D Mario speedrun just in the first place.
Oh, man. A whole game, that's intimidating. This stage enough was a grind, man. But I just really felt personally accomplished to even be able to touch that time.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Even if not break it,
Definitely.
So maybe it's a bit of an anticlimactic number one, but for me, that's the biggest feeling of accomplishment.
You tied the world record.
For one stage, the first stage on a 3DS Mario game.
I knew that was going to be your number one. Yeah, I expected that.
Yeah, but I mean, this is just us talking about what we're proud of, man.
That was a pretty fun list. I feel like it wasn't actually as humble braggy as I was concerned it might be, because it's all just stuff that's so specific to us.
Yeah, dude, unlocking all characters in Melee, that's definitely not any type of flex.
No one would brag about that.
I wouldn't say anything on these lists are particularly a flex of any sort, you know what I mean?
No, I would agree with that. Nothing that I had is like earth-shattering in any way, but it's just nice for us.
Definitely. It's earth-shattering to us and what we do with our time. And
Absolutely.
what we do with our time really speaks to what's important to us, bro.
You know what we do with our time, Sterling?
Are you going to say something about us doing a 3-shop?
Yeah.
Well, let's do it with our time. It's time to get into it. The Steam winter sale was lit. I mean, I can say that for sure.
Yeah.
Now that's all ending in 3 days. So I'm sure anyone who doesn't live under a rock and has a PC probably has a Steam account, maybe has browsed sales from time to time on Steam. The winter sale is up there. I mean, I told you, I've accumulated so many games on this sale that I can't even go through them at this point. But yeah. Loop Hero kind of simplified that because I kind of started playing that, and then I got pretty addicted to that.
Yeah. But we have some Switch games. Check out the winter sale on Steam, but we found a few for Switch. A lot of stuff ending in a day and things like that. We wanted to find the longest life that we could on good games, and in one case on this list, maybe not a good game, but a sale worth mentioning. Yeah. Yeah, we have our doubts. The Ninja Gaiden Master Collection, we spoke about this when it was announced. I think we got it on a direct or something like that at one point, and we covered it. Talked about how it looked cool. You know, Ninja Gaiden's cool. We like the 8-bit Ninja Gaiden. We like the 3D Ninja Gaiden. Maybe not as much as the 8-bit, but the collection's on sale, $39.99 to $29.99, 25% off until the 10th of this month, January. Nice.
So, you know, 50% sale, that would maybe be a pickup for me. 25% still not bad.
Yeah. Good. It's worth noting, though. I think if you haven't played these games, this is a great time to get into it.
Definitely. Double Dragon 4, one that I feel I brought up from time to time early on in the podcast. It might have been a while since I have. But this is on sale from $6.99 to $3.50, 40% off until the 16th of this month. It's one I can't recommend enough. I really like the old Double Dragon. I was telling you earlier, it kind of maintains that like exact same assortment of sprites from the original Double Dragon while having the background be a little more up to date, like look a little more like something like Devolver Digital does, you know.
Yeah, makes sense.
Some higher pixel work, but still maintaining that feel and the sprites still being the same, you know. The third on the list, questionable, but Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, $49.99 to $34.99, 30% off until the 12th.
We made a conscious choice not to talk about this game before on the podcast because neither of us really had much of an interest in it. But we both found it kind of interesting that the game is going on such a drastic sale so early in its life cycle. So similar to kind of like the GTA thing, we thought it was worth mentioning from that angle. Yeah,
definitely. I can tell you for sure. I don't see myself picking the game up. But you couldn't be more spot on. 3-Shop has been nothing but games that we've give, for the most part, glaring reviews of and actually recommend you spending money on. This is one I just thought the sale was notable.
Definitely.
Like the GTA one. You have to wonder, like I told you earlier, the game can't be performing incredibly well so close to launch if you see a drop like this.
Yeah.
We talked about maybe $29.99 being a reasonable MSRP for this, just based off of what we see. Even that being a bit of a high figure. But $50 is pretty steep. I mean, when you can actually go buy Smash Ultimate for $10 more, that is steep.
Mm-hmm. And you can go buy it used probably for less, you know.
Yep. That'd be interesting to see what physicals go for a Smash Ultimate, because I have a feeling that might be under the spell of people not wanting to get rid of that game.
It's possible, but $50 is still a lot for this game regardless.
Definitely. So, second ever controversial 3-shop entry. How do you like that? I guess the next one will be special because that'll be the third. The number 3.
We'll have to get one more. We'll have to find one more controversial one for sure.
Somebody will do it for us, man.
Yep.
But I think that brings the first episode of the Star Road podcast of 2022 to a close, Tyler.
I'm really excited, man. I feel like this is just such a every episode is so specific to us, but this almost more than any other. And we love doing those.
Yeah, as far as the structure, man, this was really personal and not so honed in on titles. Just speaking about titles, we really had some pretty wholesome conversation about broad things today.
Yeah, which I love, man.
Absolutely.
But, yeah. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback, feel free to reach out to us at starroadpodcast@gmail.com. We also post every episode as well as individual segments and clips to our YouTube channel. Sterling has really been coming through with that. So just want to say thank you again for Sterling for getting those videos up because...
Oh, it's nothing, man.
It's been really, really nice. But yeah, feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube, drop some comments, likes, share it with your friends, etc. But yeah, I think that's going to bring us to the end, Sterling.
Yep. I certainly hope everybody had a happy new year. We haven't talked resolutions, but I think our big resolution this year, Tyler, is to excel in what we do and do it happily.
Yeah, and play more indie games.
Absolutely. So everybody take it easy, be safe, and enjoy this beginning of the year. Thank you for listening to the Star Road Podcast.
Peace.